and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So in today's episode, we're going to head over to Gene Code. We're also going to visit the graveyard to go visit our mom's grave, and then also, I guess, go to the Genetic Opera to see Blind Mag, and, just be spooky and gothic, I guess. With all that being said, on today's episode, we're going to be covering a little movie from 2008 called Repo, the Genetic Opera, or Repo, the Genetic Opera, whatever you want to call it, because there is an exclamation point. So that's why I had to do my dramatic reading. But anyway, my history with this film is, I'm pretty sure I saw it probably back in 2009, probably. I was interested in the theater at some point. I went to fucking college for it. But at some point, I became interested in pursuing, theater in high school or that kind of thing. And so came across this movie, Repo, the Genetic Opera. And by this point, I had already seen Rocky Horror, so I was already familiar with that. And so this was just kind of like, okay, like this is kind of like that a little bit, and then also finding out that there's like this following behind it and whatever it is, right? So that was all cool and everything. So I watched it probably back then for the first time, and I haven't really revisited it a whole lot. The reason I'm covering it on the show in particular is that it is celebrating its 15-year anniversary this year, from 2008. It came out earlier in the month of November. I'm just, I had other stuff to do that earlier in the month. So, but I'm getting around to it now. I thought it would be a good little episode to do. And I mean, my general thoughts on the movie, I will say that for me, at least, I gave it like a 2.5, really. I think there's some good stuff in here a little bit. The aesthetics are really cool, I guess. It has a very unique aesthetic, if anything. It's very, very gothic, very much that, cyberpunk in a way, I feel like a little bit too, or something. But overall, I just don't love the story necessarily. I think there's a lot crammed into 98 minutes. And also, I mean, it's not like I'm not a musical person necessarily. I can watch a musical, but again, I don't know. I'm not like a huge hater of it. I'm not like, 1.5 star, right? But also I'm also in the thought of like, I don't know if I'd watch it again necessarily, but that's just me personally. But with all that being said, though, we're going to, move into just talk about some of the figures of the film, talking about how the movie came to be, really. And then also we'll talk about the plot, some of the characters, things like that. But without further ado, let's move on to those figures. So Repo, the Genetic Opera was released November 7th of 2008. I think widely. I think it premiered a little earlier in the year at like a film festival. But it was released November 8th of 2008 in a limited release market. I don't even think this went direct to DVD. I think it just opened in a couple theaters. A runtime of 98 minutes, and it was distributed by Lionsgate, which is why we'll get into, obviously, the involvement of Darren Lynn Bousman. But then we're looking at a budget of about $8.5 million. So the opening weekend ranking gross for this movie was it placed 46 with $53,684. Domestically, it made $146,750. And then internationally, it made $41,376. Altogether, though, it made $188,126. So needless to say, I think this really was obviously a financial bomb, but the thing is that it wasn't a movie that, I don't know, like they just kind of released it to certain markets. It's not like it was a wide release or anything like that at all. And it wasn't like it was like so direct to DVD. I guess it did become DVD, it was released to where people could find it there. But also, I mean, it was kind of set up to quote fail, if you will. Not really though, but like it's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea though. So it makes sense why the numbers are abysmal in that way. For Rotten Tomatoes scores, we have a 37% from critics from about 59 reviews, and then a 73% from about 25,000 ratings from people who've gone on the website and talked about if they like the movie or not. And I think this does have a certain cult following to it, of course. And it has a 3.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. That's what we're looking at in terms of just that kind of thing. Now, when we're talking about the cast and the crew of this movie, and the crew in particular, so as I stated before, this was directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, and I really do think, if it's my opinion, if anything, but I will say that I think that this was a movie that got made really because Darren Lynn Bousman had made quite a bit of money for Lionsgate, being that he was a part of a lot of the Saw movies, especially those early ones. And for those who may or may not know who were listening, I mean, Saw really was like, it was a huge franchise, really. It was very much like there was a Saw, you know, for quite a few years there was a Saw like every year. You know, it was kind of like Friday the 13th in that way a little bit, where they would just like make them and they would make money, you know. So that's what Lionsgate really did, and they were able to really kind of capitalize off of that, which is, you know, I mean, that's the business, make your money. I really do think that this was just something where they were able to make this movie really because Darren Lynn Bousman made quite a bit of money for Lionsgate. Otherwise, I don't think it would have gotten made with an $8.5 million budget, personally. But Darren Lynn Bousman, he did Saw 2 and Saw 3 and Saw 4. He also did the Mother's Day remake in 2010. And I will also say, so Darren Lynn Bousman also, you know, maybe a little bit of creep behavior, allegedly, but, you know, just some of the things he's kind of said, like talking about like Alexa Vega being in like a skirt and like wanting her to kind of show off a little bit. It was a little creepy. That's just my opinion, but, you know, whatever. You can find video. It's weird. Anyway, of him just kind of saying some creepy shit. Speaking of alleged creeps, or really kind of concrete creeps, maybe not Darren Smith as much. So Darren Smith and Terrance Zdunich, they are the writers, the co-writers of this movie, and we'll talk about them in a minute. I will just first and foremost say that, you know, Terrance Zdunich is sort of he is an alleged creep. He's the guy, and also Darren Smith, I think he was involved with it too. They did the Devil's Carnival and Alleluia, the Devil's Carnival as well. So, which is pretty much like after doing Repo, obviously. Yeah, I don't think Darren Smith might be a creep, but Terrance Zdunich, there's just people, there's speculation and, you know, all of that out there of just his, I don't know, just of his conduct, if you will. So yeah, I mean, and it's weird because like also like I kind of thought like this is my taste in men, I guess, but like I thought like back in the day, I thought the grave robber was kind of like hot a little bit, you know what I mean? I know I'm horrible that I say that, but yeah, it's true. But like just finding out more about just some of his alleged weirdness, I'm just like, ugh. And does that color your experience with the movie, you know? I think for some people it does, and I still kind of say, I really would still say, like, it's not like this movie's that great in general, but it doesn't help where I'm just kind of like, oh, Terrance Zdunich, he's kind of a weirdo. That's unfortunate, you know, but he made some art, and again, we'll talk about how this has all got made and everything. But yeah, that's what they did. You know, they met, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Darren Smith is also the composer of this movie. He was a part of doing that. It's really the only thing he's done in terms of music or composing. So, you know, not much to say there. Cinematographer was Joseph White. So he also shot like Tales of Halloween, which is a little anthology movie. You can find it like on Tubi, or like you can find it for free. Also Mother's Day from 2010, which was directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, so it makes sense. And then also Silent Night, which I think is a really horrible Christmas horror movie. I think it's supposed to kind of be like a weird soft reboot of like Silent Night Deadly Night or something like that, but who the fuck knows, whatever. But he shot that. And then the editor is Harvey Rosenstock. So some of his editing credits, he did Flubber with Robin Williams. He did Curly Sue from back in the 90s. And he also did the sequel to Teen Wolf 2. He also helped edit that as well. So, that's what he did, but he was brought into the fold with this. So then, in regards to our cast of characters, we have her name now is Alexa Pena Vega, but she was Alexa Vega at the time. And so what she was known for is being in the Spy Kids movie as the sister. I don't even remember her name in that, but I remember watching those movies though. Her and Daryl Sabara. She was in that, Twister, good old Helen Hunt, and was it Bill Paxton or Bill Pullman? I think one of those. And then also Sleepover from 2004. Also MLM person too, ? Oh, dear Lord. Anyway, but yeah, so that's Alexa Pena Vega. She plays Shiloh in this movie, who's our main character we're following. We then have Paul Sorvino. He's the main baddie in this movie, but he also did, he has since passed away, unfortunately, but he is Mira Sorvino's father. So Queen Mira Sorvino. And so he also was in he's a character actor. So he did Romeo plus Juliet. He was in Cruising. He was in The Stuff from the 80s. He was in Goodfellas, Bulworth. Also, he was in the Hey Arnold movie, apparently. That's fun. But yeah, that's what he ended up doing. But yeah, I mean, he's Mira Sorvino's dad, so that's a big thing too. And he stood behind her after she came out with allegations during the Me Too movement and everything, and he supported his daughter. So there you go. I like that. And then we have Anthony Stewart Head, who plays, oh my God, what was his name in this movie? But but he plays the dad. He plays Shiloh's dad. What was it? Nathan, I think his name was, or something. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so he was that character. He's obviously very well known for playing Giles from Buffy, and I've only dipped my toe in Buffy, but of course he is Giles. He was also in Sweeney Todd, though. He was in The Iron Lady. He was also in Let the Wrong One In as well, which is a movie from the same people who did Stitches from back in 2012 about the killer clown guy. He also, the same director who did that, also directed Let the Wrong One In, which is pretty much like a parody / horror comedy about vampires and stuff. So it's on Shudder. I actually didn't finish it personally. I was watching a little bit of it, but it seems like it's fun. I want to give it another go. But he was in that as well. It's he's the big star in it because, he's from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And then we have Sarah Brightman, who is mostly known for being Christine from Phantom of the Opera. She's an opera singer, really. It's not like she's not like a movie singer or anything like that. But she's mostly well known for being in Phantom of the Opera, mostly. And I thought she actually did a pretty good job in this movie. She plays Blind Mag. And then we have Paris Hilton as Amber Sweet. She, of course, she's from House of Wax, 2005 movie, which I saw in the theaters. She's also from being a socialite from the Hilton hotels, and she's also Taco Bell spokeslady as well. It's fun, great. So yeah, I love those little Taco Bell commercials she's in. It's kind of great. But anyway, so she plays Amber Sweet. She's the daughter of the Largo family, who's just all wild and crazy and whatever. And then Bill Moseley, he plays whatever the fuck his name is. I don't remember. I'm sorry. But he plays one of the brothers. The other brother is played by Ogre from Skinny Puppy, but which I don't listen to that music. I don't even know who that is. But he plays the other brother. But Bill Moseley, to me, of course, is Chop Top from TCM 2, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But he's also Otis Firefly from House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, all of that. He's Bill fucking Moseley, dude. Come on. I did say in my Letterboxd review that I appreciate his presence being here, but he doesn't save this movie for me, really and truly. And also the unfortunate part, and again, I'm not I'm not like I'm not a musician as a trade or whatever, but I am somebody who did spend time singing and doing all that kind of stuff, and I do like singing. Again, I'm not like a voice teacher, but boy cannot sing to save his life. A fair amount of these people don't know how to sing, really. To be honest, Alexa Vega is not very good at singing either. Unfortunately, that sucks. But that's like the big stuff. We also have Joan Jett in a cameo appearance as well. That was great. I loved that. Loved it. Those are like our big people that we have in the movie, though. Like everybody else is just kind of like random as shit. Yeah. And even like Darren Smith is in like he's the band leader in one of the songs, which is kind of fun. So good for them. But yeah, generally though, so when we're talking about just like how did this movie come to happen and be, right? The big thing we can talk about, so I'll be pulling just from general information that I found, but also there is a Polygon article that you can go to titled Repo the Genetic Opera is a gory, disturbing, awful musical that defied all odds by Julia Alexander. And it was done on October 26, 2016. And it was a part of a 13 Days of Halloween series. So they had opinion pieces about different films that exemplify what Halloween means to these authors that did this. So she's quoted as saying, in 2004, director Darren Lynn Bousman to write a wave of horror movies focusing on grotesque, boundary-pushing imagery with a script for what would be called Become the Desperate. So he tried to sell The Desperate to a couple of studios, but he was told that it was a little too grisly for a mainstream audience. This script got into the hands of Lee Winnell and James Wan, who had just become overnight celebrities because of Saw, and they invited Bousman to actually direct the sequel. He would hang on to direct the second, third, and fourth Saw movies, as I stated already, before handing them off to David Hack. And although he loved working on the movies, there was always another pet project that he wanted to launch. And this was a horror musical set in a dystopian future based on a play he staged in both New York and Los Angeles. And despite his success with the Saw franchise and his rapid rise to the top of the chain in the world of horror cinema, Bousman could not get a studio to finance it. Makes enough sense. And so by 2008, Bousman decided he didn't need the support of Lionsgate, the same studio that had distributed Saw, and he actually financed 90% of the musical himself, taking it on a cross-country road trip and handing out flyers to college kids to get them to see the movie. And then the director spent 2 months self-marketing with very little help from Lionsgate, and even though the film only grossed $147,000, he succeeded in creating a new iconic horror rock opera that was just as angry and revenge-seeking as he felt at the time, which is called Repo the Genetic Opera. So yeah, there's that. Repo the Genetic Opera was born out of passion, anger, reckless abandon, and a DIY punk attitude that would have made Sid Vicious proud. And the result was a subpar musical, horror musical that has earned an army of devoted fans who reenact it live every Halloween. So, this film takes place in a dystopian future where surgeries are handed out like ice cream cones and personal debt is on the rise as people take out loans to pay for their cosmetic fixes. Yada, yada, yada. We'll talk about all this in a minute. Oh, okay. So there's some, I want to talk about just some of the things that she talks about. So, there's 3 important aspects of Repo the Genetic Opera that can be examined to see why this has become the cult film that it has. And so this has to do with the cast, the ambiance, and the music. To start with the cast, so to have a film like Repo be taken seriously, you have to have a stellar cast, no ifs, ands, or buts. And so Bousman, who was a director who liked to work both with classically trained people and also just a variety of interesting people, he viewed Repo as a way to work with some of the most talented people, like Andrew Head, and also Sarah Brightman, but also iconic figures at the time like Paris Hilton and Ogre from Skinny Puppy. Like I said, I think Anthony Stewart Head, I think he does a really good job in this actually as well. And part of it is the collection of misfits on screen. Much like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the other horror-based rock opera that got to cult status, it doesn't emphasize one actor or musician being better than the rest, but that's because they all ranged from everything. It's important to remember that Bousman didn't really receive much from Lionsgate to help finance this movie, and it's pretty obvious when you're watching it. So the sets aren't up to par with other horror movies. The costumes are obviously cheap, and the effects are more comical than they are scary. However, the cast of Repo does a good job with what is available to them to just turn this dystopian future into something that's terrifying. And it's pretty gory for a musical, but the actual horror is in the message of addiction and reliance on plastic surgery and huge financial loans that the cast is able to drive home. Also, just the ambiance and attitude of this movie. This is a good little article. This is why I'm talking about it. But it's a gift for the goths, apparently, which I think is cute. So yeah, I mean, like, it's got cyberpunk elements, as I stated earlier, but it really feels like it was made by gothy art kids for other gothy art kids. And even Bousman said in Filmmaker Magazine in 2008 that the film was made specifically with that audience in mind. He's quoted as saying, "The movie appeals to the fringe. It appeals to the gothy, outside the box crowd, the gay crowd, the theater crowd," Bousman says. Whether you're a teenager and looking for a piece of art that connects with how you're feeling, what you're going through, or mirrors back the image you're going for, there's no better way than finding it. So yeah, looking at the cult statuses built for itself, this author wasn't the only one who felt this way, and just felt like, they had this goth phase. They weren't relying on the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is still like the queen of rock operas, obviously. Horror rock operas. Repo, I guess, I feel like it probably felt like this was Rocky Horror for these folks. And also the soundtrack as well. So it's less of a horror movie than it is a musical. So naturally it had to have a soundtrack that backed that up. And yeah, I think like there is some good music in there. Again, I guess your mileage will vary with it. I will just say though, so if anything, okay, yeah, so this is the end of the article, but, we'll quote this author is quoted as saying, "So Repo the Genetic Opera is an odd film that should have never been created. That never should have been created. But as Halloween edges closer and she plans out a marathon, she can't help but search for her copy of Repo. It's a trash fire of ideas, and although somebody probably should have stopped Bousman from financing it himself, especially considering the return on investment, this author is thankful that every year that this magical gothy trash fire exists." And I think that's kind of a great way of looking at it in a way. So shout out to the Polygon article I just talked about, but it's kind of true because like I think this movie does it fits for a certain subsect of people, and I think that's why it has this cult following to it, and it's something that for all intents and purposes, I guess it's succeeded to have at least this cult following, and there are some people who really, really like it. It may have not done well financially, obviously, but who gives a shit? Whatever. To talk a little bit about the development of it though. So, in 1986, Darren Smith, I mentioned earlier, he had a friend who was going through bankruptcy and whose possessions were going into foreclosure. And he was inspired by this to come up with the idea of a future where not only one's property, but one's body parts could also be repossessed. So him and Terrance Zdunich, they collaborated ideas. They met in an acting class, and so they collaborated ideas and plot lines to create the first version of Repo, which was called The Necro Merchant's Debt, which told the story of a grave robber in debt to a repo organ man. This premiered at the John Raitt Theater in 2002, and after becoming such a success, Smith and Zdunich, they expanded on the universe to create all the storylines that would end up becoming Repo the Genetic Opera later in 2002. So many changes were made gradually to the characters and music throughout various incarnations through 2005. For example, Roddy in the earlier versions was not father to Luigi, Pavi, and Amber, but instead he was a younger brother to Luigi and Pavi, while Amber was Luigi's daughter. Lyrics were adjusted to new arcs, and some songs were dropped entirely, such as But This Is Opera, which was cut out in an effort to change the direction of Mag's character. And then after years of being performed as a stage play, Repo was adapted into a 10-minute short film, which was directed and financed by Darren Lynn Bousman to pitch to studios. And so it actually had Shawnee Smith in it as Amber Sweet, Michael Rooker as the Repo Man, a couple different things. And it did end up getting, again, it had the $8.5 million behind it. Once it got picked up by Lionsgate, principal photography began in September 2007 in Canada, and it was scheduled to be released on April 25th, 2008, but it was pushed back to November 7th, as I stated. So there was that. And then the release of this, so it had a limited release in the US and Canada. It had a further limited Canada release as well. It was released in the Czech Republic and also in Spain. And also in December 2008, several more US theatrical screenings were announced. And it also had the Repo Road Tour as well in Europe. So after initial theatrical releases and DVD sales, fan support has caused Repo, the Genetic Opera, to be played in select cinemas for the duration of 2009 and well into 2014, some with shadow casts in which a group of actors and performers reenact the film in front of the big screen while the film is playing in the background, much like Rocky Horror. And it was also a screening at San Diego Comic-Con International in 2010. And it was released on DVD and Blu-ray in January 2009 as well. So you can find it there. And if anything, so the consensus for this film, according to Rotten Tomatoes, is bombastic and intentionally gross. Repo the Genetic Opera has a unique style, but lacks the wit and substance to be involving. And some of the people who are critics, they've said, so Kyle Smith from the New York Post concluded, there probably aren't enough futuristic goth rock musicals, but Repo the Genetic Opera is weak on a couple of things a musical needs, music and lyrics. Nathan Lee from the New York Times declared that the film, quote, feels destined to please a campy coterie of fans and no one else, and criticized the music, saying, quote, a few catchy melodies, some clever lyrics, or even a sense that the score wasn't just one long unmodulated track might have energized the singularly inert tale. And Tasha Robinson from the AV Club said one of the main issues with Repo the Genetic Opera is that nearly every aspect of it goes on too long. The songs were generally overextended, which is a particular problem given that most of them are also atonal and dull, either chanted or seemingly assembled from a series of clunky, ill-fitting, barely rhyming lines. And ultimately, I spent the vast majority of the film either bored or squirming with discomfort over the cheap gore, the arrhythmic songs, and the phenomenally bombastic performances. And so there was that. And then also, Paris Hilton won a Raspberry for her worst supporting actress at the 29th annual Golden Raspberry Awards, the Razzies. And then also some songs like Chase the Morning, Chromagia, and Zydrate Anatomy were shortlisted for the Academy Award for Best Original Song, although none of them were nominated. I wonder why. Anyway, so... But that's a little bit about the movie as a whole, of how it came to be, if you will. So that's a little bit about that. But let's get into a bit of a plot, right? Like, let's talk about this a little bit. What is this movie actually about? Now, if I had to say what this fucking movie's about, I'll tell you the actual plot in a minute, but if I had to give an elevator pitch, pretty much what it's about is a dystopian future where obviously organs and plastic surgery have become commodified and become something where, people really want all of it. And so pretty much there's a girl and her dad. I don't even know how to explain it, really. I'm trying to do my best, but pretty much girl and her dad. Girl feels like she's a teenager and she's like fucking trying to find out more about like her life and trying to break away and rebel from her father. Her father has like a deep, dark secret that he doesn't want her to find out. And, you know, just some shit goes down, I guess. You know, it's pretty much it from what I can gather. But let's actually talk about what this is. So by the year 2056, an epidemic of organ failures has devastated the planet and wiped out 99% of the human population. The mega corporation GeneCo provides organs on a payment plan, and clients who miss payments are hunted down by Repo men, skilled assassins who, quote, repossess the organs. And we have Genetic Repo Man as one of the songs talking about this. The CEO of GeneCo, Roddy Largo, discovers he is terminally ill. Roddy's children, Luigi played by Bill Moseley, Pavi, played by Ogre from Skinny Puppy, and Amber, played by Paris Hilton, they bicker over who will inherit GeneCo. This is the Mark It Up song, but Roddy believes none of them are worthy heirs and instead plans to give his fortune to 17-year-old Shiloh Wallace, played by Alexa Vega, Pena Vega, the daughter of his late ex-fiance, Marnie. And this is the song Things You See in a Graveyard that shows up. And remember, this is a rock opera, so they're singing throughout this. Anyway, Shiloh has inherited a rare blood disease from Marnie that requires her to stay indoors, though she longs to see the outside world. The song Infected comes through. And so Shiloh's overprotective father, Nathan, I got it, played by Anthony Stewart Head, believes he accidentally killed Marnie with a treatment he created for her illness. In truth, a jealous Roddy secretly poisoned Marnie's medicine and blackmailed Nathan, promising not to arrest him if he agreed to become GeneCo's head repo man. Though he has convinced Shiloh he's a doctor. This legal assassin is where that song comes in. One night, Shiloh secretly visits Marnie's tomb and runs into the omniscient grave robber, played by Terrance Zdunich, who is digging up bodies to secrete Zydrate, a euphoric and addictive painkiller that he sells on the street to keep up with his GeneCo payments. And this is where 21st Century Cure comes in as a song. Roddy lures Shiloh to GeneCo's fair with the promise of a cure for her disease, and there she meets Blind Mag, played by Sarah Brightman, an opera singer and GeneCo's celebrity spokesperson. Born blind, Mag has been given surgically enhanced eyes by GeneCo at the cost of indefinite employment, though she is soon resigning. And Grave Robber helps Shiloh escape the fairgrounds, encountering several of his customers, including the surgery-addicted Amber. And this is Zydrate Anatomy, which is like the most well-known song in this movie. Shiloh learns that Mag's eyes are set for repossession, and that Amber will replace her as GeneCo's spokeswoman. And after Gene Cops arrive, Shiloh quickly returns to her room before Nathan notices her missing. And so Roddy hires Nathan to repossess Mag's eyes, but Nathan refuses, citing that Mag was Marnie's best friend. And this is the Night Surgeon song. An infuriated Roddy vows to have Nathan taken out, and Mag visits Shiloh and reveals that she is her godmother, and that Nathan had told her Shiloh died with Marnie. And she cautions Shiloh to not make the same mistakes that she did. Chase the Morning is the song that comes in. And Nathan arrives and forces Mag out before after she scolds him for lying and incarcerating Shiloh. And Everyone's a Composer is the song that's here. Meanwhile, Roddy writes his will, ready to make Shiloh his sole beneficiary. And this is the Gold song. Anyway, so then Roddy invites Shiloh to the opera. At the opera tonight is the song that comes in. And Nathan heads to the opera to find her, pursued by Gene Cops. I like that. Who he quickly dispatches. Amber makes her stage debut, but her performance is ruined when her transplanted face falls off. And Mag completes her final performance, but deviates from the song's grand finale, denouncing the Largo family and gouging her eyes out in an act of defiance. And that's chromagia. Roddy rips the cords suspending Mag, impaling her on a fence, but assures that the panicking audience that Mag's death was staged as part of the show. And then Shiloh is approached by a Repo Man and attacks him with a shovel, revealing that he is Nathan, and she angrily confronts Nathan for lying to her about his profession. This is where the song Let the Monster Rise comes in. And on stage, Roddy reveals that Nathan has been poisoning Shiloh's, quote, medicine in an attempt to keep her safe from the outside world after being unable to cope with the loss of Marnie. So a little, Munchausen by proxy going on. And as his disease rapidly worsens, Roddy offers Shiloh Jinko if she kills her father. When she refuses, Roddy uses the last of his strength to fatally shoot Nathan and dies after disowning his children. And after a tearful farewell to her father, in the song I Didn't Know I Love You So Much, Shiloh leaves, deciding that her father's actions do not dictate her future. And this is where the song Genetic Emancipation comes through. And Shiloh flees, leaving Jinko with no legal heir. Amber, as a result, inherits the company instead and auctions her fallen face to charity, which Pavi wins after Luigi kills the top 3 bidders. And so that is, in a nutshell, the actual plot of the movie, if you will. So yeah, I mean, like, there's just a lot going on in 98 minutes for this movie, truly. And I feel like that's the thing about this movie, is that it is already a rock opera, so they're singing throughout the whole thing, which is fine. I understand that with what's going on, but I do think, like, if anything, they shoved a lot in here. Okay, they just did. And it's hard to kind of like parse through it all. Plus, they also put in like some random ass like comic book kind of inserts to flesh out the story a little bit more, which again I think some people just think it's a little weird. And yeah, I mean, and also I feel like a lot of these characters are very surface, if you will. I don't know how deep they get. Again, some of the performances, like, I do think Anthony Stewart Head does a good job as Nathan. He's kind of over the top and whatever, but I don't mind it. I kind of didn't mind watching him, or even like Sarah Brightman. Like, I liked watching her in a way. Now, Alexa Vega, I mean, she was 20 by the time, she was probably 19 when she did this. So, I mean, if anything, she feels like a teenager. She's supposed to be 17, so she's not that far off, but, like, I don't know, it felt very one note to me, if you will. And even like, Amber, again, this is sort of one note, but there's not much to it. But just having Paris Hilton there, I think also, and apparently Paris Hilton was actually like, she apparently kind of helped get this movie like completed, if you will. Because I think they ran out of financing, and she was actually able to do like a club appearance apparently to help pay for it, because she was actually really behind it, and again, it's something similar to like the House of Wax movie, where people know who she is and they know her from it. And so I don't know. And some people, they're just like, oh, hell yeah. Like, let's watch this movie where her face falls off. Why not? And like Bill Moseley, like, you can tell he's like just chewing the scenery just works for him. And that is just like what he's doing, obviously. But yeah, I mean, but I think if anything, like, I don't know, this movie to me, if anything, it's just a, I don't know. I did not, absolutely love it. And it's funny because of like, why would you cover a movie that you didn't like? I mean, whatever, I can cover what I want. And I do think that this movie does have a cult following, which is exactly why I would cover it. However, it just was not my favorite necessarily. I think what it has going for it, if anything, because I could go on about just like what I don't like about it, but I'm not going to do that really. I already kind of said that. But I mean, like I said earlier, with what I think this movie does well, I think it has a really cool aesthetic, and it does have a very specific aesthetic, which is fine. It's very much made for people on the fringe, for the goths and for like, those kinds of folk. So, I definitely think there's that. I don't know about the gays necessarily. I don't know how. There are some people, and I haven't found like specific articles or anything, but there are some people who kind of see like Amber as like a little bit transcoded, if you will, which I mean, I can kind of see it, maybe a little bit, you know, I get it. But part of it is like, you know, but then also like, I've also heard a little bit about like, is Terrance Zdunich like a little bit like homophobic? I don't know. I don't know if he is actually. I don't have anything to say about that, but you know, it's just one of those things where I think it has a cool aesthetic. I like that part. There are some songs that are kind of like earworms and like, you know, sort of fun to listen to. I mean, Zydrate Anatomy is really pretty good. And then also like, yeah, there's a couple of them that are just like, you know, oh, that's like a fun little catchy song or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't always work for like a complete opera necessarily, and you could really dig into that if you wanted to. But yeah, I think that's what it has going for it, is that yes, some of the music is cool, it's fine, you know, it's all right. I think the aesthetic is interesting too. It is very much that, and I'm always down for a movie that has a certain aesthetic to it and that it commits. You know, I'm always down for a movie that commits, and I'll think, if anything, that this movie does commit to what it's trying to do. I just feel like it's very just bloated, and it's a little bit just like trying to do a little too much, and it just doesn't make me want to rewatch it necessarily, truly. But I think, you know, it seemed like, if anything, to me, you know, it has this, like, if anything, I'm happy that, like, someone like Darren Lynn Bousman, if anything, I'm glad he was able to at least get something off the ground that he believed in, and that he was able to give, even if the guy is a creep a little bit, even with that, like, was able to give something and able to put something that he believed in, and was able to help, you know, Terrance Zdunich and, you know, Darren Smith to be able to help them kind of launch their careers, if you will. Because I think it's safe to say that, yes, it absolutely did. So, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with me saying that. Trying to see if there's anything else. There's also Thoughts from the Bench. They did an article from A.K. Moorhead, is who did this, is a blogger, and they talk about a cult classic, Repo the Genetic Opera, and they talk about their thoughts about, and they actually really like this movie apparently too, which is super great. So if you want to get a positive you know, opinion on it, you can always go here. There are some articles you're able to find about this that again are from people who talk about, you know, oh, this is a movie that means something to me in some way, and all that kind of good stuff. It's fine. Yeah, what else is there? Oh my gosh. Oh, also there's this other article as well. There is Repo the Genetic Opera is the hot mess America deserves right now. This was done by Emma Ambrose in February of 2021. I might give that a list. I'm going to give that a read. I was on Film Cred. So, again, I'm just shouting out like reporters as well, because I don't have much to say about this movie, to be honest with you. I did want to, like, you know, cover it, and I'm glad I did. I think it is worth talking about, if anything, because it has been able to carve out this little niche for itself of these people who like the movie, you know, and who stand behind it. There's also the people who like The Devil's Carnival and Alleluia, The Devil's Carnival as well. So there's also those people as well. And so, you know, but it starts with Repo, if anything. And again, I am just somebody who, I do like some musicals, but I'm not like the be all end all about them either. So, you know, take that with what you want. But I think if anything, this movie has carved out a niche for its cult members, for its, you know, fans and everything, which is cool. I'm never gonna I'm never going to judge a movie for doing that, if anything. Like, you know, it's none of my business. Even if I don't like your movie that much, like, you know, I'm not going to hate on something that people like, you know, or whatever it is. So there's that. You can find this. So I watched it on Roku channel. I personally wouldn't pay to watch this, so I would just try to find it free somewhere. It does make the rounds on Tubi every so often, so you can probably find it there. You're never really going to find it on like a major... You're never going to find it on like a major streaming service of like, you know, that you'd probably have to pay for necessarily. I think it tends to make the rounds on like I said, Roku, maybe Pluto as well. And then also Tubi. I've seen it on Tubi before, so you can definitely find it there when the license goes to that site, obviously. But if anything, you know, I would at least give it a watch. You know, I think if you've never seen it before, I think it's at least worth the one watch, and you can kind of decide whether you like it or not. I myself will probably not be watching it again. But I would say at least to give it a watch once. It's horror themed. There's some music stuff in there, and you know, it's celebrating 15 years, and that always gets me a little, in a weird way, nostalgic, because it makes me think of when I was a teenager and just the things I was into. What was I doing back then, which was just watching movies and shit. And so that's why I also thought to do this episode too, because why not? This is something I've been aware of it for a very long time, and even if I'm not a super duper fan of it, right, I still just want to, you know, I still want to do the job that I want to do the job in talking about this movie that has been able to carve out this cult status, and really be able to make something that, you know, if anything, I think it's successfully done what it wanted to do. If anything, I think it wanted to be this like out there musical, and it was something that was made by these guys, and depending on, you know, barring what I feel about either of them or whatever it is, or just their conduct, you know, I feel like if anything, like I'll at least say like, hey, you know what, you're following what you want to do, and that's super cool. But that was a long-winded response. It was really much me saying, hey, you know what, go watch it for free and make your own decision of whether you'd want to watch it again or not. But yeah, and also happy belated birthday to Repo the Genetic Opera. So give it a watch, see how you like it, and you know what, at least hopefully you probably haven't paid for it. So if you hate it, then hopefully you haven't paid for it, and if you love it, then hey, maybe you'll have something to watch every year if you want. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so via email at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com in case you want to give any movie or episode recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you'd like to just say, hey, I'm open to all of it. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, you can do so on Instagram and Instagram threads at cultcinemacircle. I tend to post what I'll be covering for the next week on there, post stories, things like that. On X, I'm at cultcinecircle. On there, I don't really post a whole lot, but if you want to follow the show, it's there for you to follow. And then on Letterboxd, I'm at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On there, I log little movie reviews, I'll log what I'm watching, and then it's also a nice way to kind of see what I might be covering on the show in the future. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much on all of them. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review about the show, so we can grow the audience and then just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 1993's Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit. Dolores Van Cartier is again asked to don the nun's habit to help a rundown Catholic school presided over by Mother Superior. And if trying to reach out to a class full of uninterested students isn't bad enough, the sisters discover that the school is due to be closed by the unscrupulous chief of a local authority. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, and remember, Zydrate comes in a little glass vial. Take care. Bye.